The cleaner's hand brushed my elbow as I passed the hallway junction near Conference A. "Ma'am," he said, voice low like he'd been coached to whisper bad news. "They moved your laptop into the conference room. You probably don't want to go in yet." That stopped me. I still had the to-go tray from Java Junction in my hand. 2 black coffees, 1 decaf mocha, and a tea for Marcy at reception, who always seemed like she was balancing tears and toner cartridges. My badge, clipped neatly to my blazer, had just failed twice at the side entrance. I'd chalked it up to a random system update. But the cleaner, Elias, I think his name was, had this look. Not panic, not even urgency. Just this slow, quiet warning. A kind of human firewall. The kind of expression that says, "You're about to witness your name being used like a credit card by someone with zero balance. If you're hooked already, and trust me, this story only gets messier, uglier, and more satisfying. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video." You'd be surprised how much it fuels the team to keep digging up stories like these from the bowels of corporate betrayal. Only 3% of viewers actually subscribe, and that little button makes a massive difference. All right, back to it. 6 hours earlier, I was in my zone. 6:45 a.m. start, almond butter toast, muted NPR on the counter. I had my badge, my notebook, my lucky pen that technically stopped working last week but still clicked with the kind of purpose I liked. My presentation was saved to both my encrypted drive and the air-gapped backup I kept on a USB key stashed inside a chapstick tube. I wasn't paranoid. I was methodical. This pitch wasn't just another client showcase, it was the one. $38 million tied to a government contract renewal that would shift our entire fiscal trajectory for the next 2 years. I had spent 6 weeks refining a multi-tiered data compliance model that did what no one else in the company had even thought to attempt. Layered integration between federal and state frameworks, predictive modeling for upcoming regulatory shifts, and a dashboard that even a sleep-deprived procurement officer could navigate. My boss, Ava, had called it surgical. The VP, on the one occasion he looked up from his phone, grunted, "Looks dense." I left nothing to chance. My office door locked behind me with a click I always double-checked. The laptop stayed tethered to the biometric stand, my fingerprint, my 2FA token, and a rotating password system I updated every 72 hours. I wasn't flashy. I didn't play the politics game, but I played to win, quietly, precisely. By 8:30, I'd reviewed the full deck twice. Red, blue, and green tabs marked dependencies, budget thresholds, and federal priority flags. It looked beautiful, not in the graphic design way, but in the "this could land us a multi-year retainer" way. I dropped off the coffees, exchanged a smile with Marcy, then ducked into the ladies' room to freshen up. When I came back, my badge didn't work. I tried again. Nothing. The red light blinked like it was wagging a finger. "Maybe facilities ran a patch," Marcy offered weakly, glancing at her own console like it might offer an explanation. "Your laptop's not in your office, though. They moved it to conference room A for the pitch." "Who did?" "I don't know," she said, tapping nervously at her keyboard. "I just follow instructions from upstairs." I stared at her a beat too long. Upstairs. Only 3 people had authority to approve a laptop move like that. Ava, who was in Geneva this week, the director of infrastructure, who would never, and the VP, Mark Ryland, Sierra's father, Sierra, that oxygen-sucking blonde fog who'd flounced in 6 weeks ago with a designer handbag and a new job title no one could define. She had failed upward through 3 internal roles, each time landing a little closer to the inner circle. And lately, she'd been circling me. As I stood in the hallway, pulse slow but hot in my neck, Elias gave me that look again. Not pity, just awareness. Like he knew he wasn't watching the beginning of a betrayal, just the middle of one. "She's already inside," he said, "with your slides on the screen." I moved to the corner, just past the bend where the frosted glass started. I could see silhouettes, movement, a figure pacing, laughing even. Sierra. Hands gesturing toward the screen, flipping through my data structure, probably explaining my compliance tiers with the same breathless, clueless flair she used last week to describe oat milk as a political statement. I didn't move. Not forward. Not yet. I stood there longer than I should have, holding that tray of lukewarm coffees like some kind of corporate DoorDash ghost while the auto lock beeped again. Denied. red, flashing, like I didn't exist anymore. Third attempt, same result. My badge, the one I'd worn for 4 years straight, clipped faithfully to every blazer I owned, was suddenly just a piece of plastic. Not a system error, not a glitch, an erasure. I glanced back at Marcy, who was now pretending to type, but whose fingers weren't actually moving, just hovering. She finally looked up, gave me this tight little smile that barely reached her cheeks. Facilities pinged earlier, she said like she was reading off a cue card. Said your laptop was moved to conference room A, I think for the presentation? The presentation that's supposed to be at 10, that I'm supposed to lead? She blinked. It's all happening kind of fast this morning, huh? Fast. That word rolled around in my head like a marble in a drain pipe. My heart didn't race, not yet. But it shifted. It leaned forward. Something was wrong, and not just tech moved your monitor wrong. No, this felt like someone rewrote the cast list while I was in the bathroom and gave my lines to a glorified extra. Can you buzz facilities? I asked, already knowing how this would play out. I just follow instructions from upstairs, Marcy said, her voice now an octave lower. She didn't meet my eyes. Upstairs. Again. I pulled out my phone, hoping to check my calendar for any last-minute changes. The invite, my invite, was gone. Just gone. No access, no notes, no join link, nothing. It was like I'd never been on the project at all. That's when the timeline clicked into place. Last night, 9:17 p.m., I'd received a Teams ping from Sierra. Just an emoji, a smiley face. I'd ignored it. This morning, 6:52 a.m., my encrypted login sequence ran without flags. The device was secure. I'd run the credential sweep myself before even walking in. 2-factor auth, biometric scan, manual token. I triple-checked because I knew what was at stake. Now, 9:42 a.m., my device was no longer in my office. I wasn't on the calendar. My badge didn't work. And a temp cleaner just warned me off walking into a room that had my work projected on a screen. I stepped back into the hallway and stared down the long pane of frosted glass leading to Conference A. Movement on the far end. Laughter. A chair scraped. Then a voice. Sierra's voice, describing predictive risk thresholds, like she'd just come up with the phrase mid-brunch. She didn't even understand how the model worked. I knew that because she'd asked me last week during lunch what a compliance delta was. Now she was standing in front of my system architecture like it was her senior thesis. I didn't go in, I didn't scream, I didn't do anything dramatic. Instead, I walked quietly around the corner, slid down the hall toward the break room, and pulled up the company's internal device management dashboard from my phone. One login. Active session. User L. DeWitt. Machine. Laptop 443DNT location. Conf a pre-S1 logged in. 9:12 a.m. That was 10 minutes before I'd even re-entered the building. My fingerprint wasn't scanned. My token wasn't used. Someone had overridden the lock protocols manually, admin credentials, temporary override, auth. Code, Ryland Level 3, Mark Ryland, the VP, Sierra's father. There it was, a handoff in plain sight. Daddy gave her the keys and she went joyriding through my career. I stared at the screen. One more breath, one more beat. Then I took a screenshot. Then 3 more, wide, tight, time-stamped. I opened my encrypted email draft marked legal hold urgent. I didn't hit send, not yet. Let them finish the first few slides. Let her stutter when they ask questions. Let them all pretend they don't know how deep this screw-up is about to go. I wasn't locked out. I was watching. I stood just to the left of the frosted glass, close enough to hear voices, but far enough back that I wouldn't cast a shadow. Elias hadn't said anything else. Just gave me that slow, deliberate shake of the head before disappearing down the corridor, like he hadn't just cracked the floor under my feet. The hallway outside Conference A always smelled like printer ink and dying ambition, but now it reeked of something worse. Performance. Applause, chairs shifting politely, and Sierra's voice, syrupy, over-enunciated like someone reading a press release off a teleprompter. And with this projection model, she said, pausing for the dramatic effect, we're actually able to preempt regulatory bottlenecks before they even appear. That's what makes this platform so disruptive. She didn't build a damn thing, not the dashboard, not the model, not the tiered framework that stitched 5 separate compliance logs into a real-time cascade. She'd asked me 3 days ago, are audit flags the red ones or the orange ones? But now she was in there, pacing like she'd cracked Cold Fusion over brunch, using my work like it was a karaoke track she just happened to know the words to. I peeked around the glass. There she was, blonde, smiling, hair in a glossy high ponytail that probably cost more than my laptop, pointing toward a screen filled with my slides. Slides I built from scratch, slide by slide, right down to the alignment of the damn bullet points, because even that mattered to me. And not just because I'm meticulous, because this pitch was life or death for our government contract, because the model wasn't some plug-and-play SaaS mock-up. It was real, validated, backed by 6 weeks of data triangulation and logged with version history on every change. And now here it was, being served with a side of nepotism and Sephora highlighter. I eased back into the wall, pulled out my phone, and snapped another photo. Just the edge of the glass, the timestamp, the silhouette of Sierra gesturing toward the predictive threshold chart. I remembered making that one at 2 a.m. after Ava flagged a clause in the RFP about cross-agency modeling. I'd built it while my eyes were burning and my fingers cramped from rewriting the logic loop that tied federal audit flags to state triggers. Sierra had no idea what she was presenting. She probably thought federal harmonization was a playlist. Inside the room, someone laughed politely, probably one of the sales guys who'd roll over for a free muffin and a warm seat. Then a question. What's your fallback if the data pipeline breaks mid-audit? A pause, a beat too long. Sierra's voice faltered. Well, the redundancy is built in automatically with the macro triggers. She pronounced macro like it rhymed with taco. I didn't smile, but I felt it. That first crack in her porcelain confidence. The moment she realized reading my slides wasn't going to save her from questions I'd written into the footnotes of the model itself. I opened my encrypted cloud app and located the system's most recent access log. Live session still active, still listed under my name. Except, now a second IP had popped in. Internal admin address, likely IT. Someone else had noticed. I copied the log, added it to my legal draft, and closed the screen. I wasn't ready to press send. Not yet. Let the clock run a little longer. Let her get to slide 14, the one about embedded audit flags and federal retention protocol. That's when the real questions would start. That's when the trap would spring. And all I had to do was wait. I pulled back from the glass like it was on fire. My heartbeat didn't spike. It settled. Slower, lower, quieter. Like my body knew this wasn't the time for emotion. This was code red in lowercase, contained, clinical, quiet. In the hallway, I slid down next to the utility closet, out of view from anyone exiting Conference A. My phone was already open to the admin panel before I sat down. No one knew I still had elevated permissions. I'd helped build the first layer of this compliance platform 3 years ago. They never revoked my back-end access because no one really understood what I built well enough to maintain it without me. Session. Active. Device. Laptop. 443D into user. Elduit. Logged in. 9:12 a.m. IP. Internal node. Conf Apri S1. I hadn't been in that room all day. I drilled deeper. Biometric check. Bypassed. Override reason, temp admin access authorized by Ryland M. That was it. No password, no two-factor, no fingerprint, just a goddamn skeleton key from the man who still thought compliance meant making sure the interns wore blazers. Mark Ryland had authorized a credential override on my machine. His daughter had walked in and opened it like she owned the place. And now she was presenting a system that would have thrown red flags if anyone else had done what she just did, accessing restricted code under someone else's login. I leaned my head back against the wall, just long enough to feel it hit. Not the betrayal. No, that had already curdled into something more useful, more surgical. This wasn't just personal theft. This was a federal vendor system. And what Sierra just did, accessing a system using falsified credentials tied to my security clearance, was a reportable breach, an actual legal trigger, and we were mid-contract renewal. I opened my screenshots folder and took 7 captures. Active session with my name, device ID tied to the conference room, biometric bypass with admin override, access timestamp, session duration, list of accessed files, the flagged override log with Ryland's name in plain text. I opened the legal shared inbox, compliance escalation. Subject, urgent, unauthorized access, active session. Under compromised credentials. I attached the screenshots, copied the raw log string into the body, and added one line of text. System accessed via temp admin override. I am not currently in possession of this device. Logged location, CONF upper ES1. Risk of misrepresentation in federal context. Recommend immediate escalation. I didn't CC anyone. Not Ava. Not IT. Just legal. Let them figure out who else needed to be looped in. I hit send. It was done. The trigger was pulled. Back inside Conference A, Sierra was still talking. I heard her say something about interoperable audit workflows, and it took everything in me not to laugh out loud. I had coined that phrase. Literally. It didn't even exist until I'd stitched 3 separate systems together with custom middleware 2 weeks ago, and now she was regurgitating it like a third grader delivering lines for a play she hadn't rehearsed. I glanced at the internal activity feed. A second session had just opened. Legal. They were inside the system now, scanning the same logs I just sent. 3 minutes later, the presentation room went silent. Not applause silence, not question silence, the kind of silence that happens when someone walks in uninvited and doesn't ask permission to speak. That was legal. They'd just entered the room. I didn't move. I didn't need to. I'd already detonated the first charge. The rest would fall like clockwork. The click of heels on laminate was sharp, fast, and completely out of place in that room. Legal doesn't attend presentations. They don't do walk-ins. They don't make noise unless someone's already bleeding. But the second those footsteps crossed the threshold of Conference A, the room, full of forced smiles and surface-level nods, shifted like a dropped tray. I heard it from the hallway. The inhale, the chair legs scraping, the confused shuffle of someone realizing the temperature had just dropped 20 degrees. I couldn't see her face, but I knew it was Christine Evers, lead compliance counsel. You don't forget the sound of the woman who wears tension like perfume and files her nails while quoting vendor clauses from memory. She didn't bother to clear her throat. She just walked in, laptop under one arm, and said to the room calmly, "So, who logged in under her credentials?" Silence. Not the awkward kind. Not even the guilty kind. The, "oh, we're all in trouble now" kind. I pictured the slide on screen, slide 14, where the live model syncs with federal retention protocols. It pings an active session. And that session was still under my name. Sierra, from what I could hear, let out a sound like a cough and a stutter trying to mate. I'm not sure what you mean," she said. And just like that, her tone cracked. The airy confidence from before evaporated in 5 syllables. Christine didn't move. "The session ID tagged to this live model is registered to Lauren DeWitt," she said. The words clean, surgical. "Biometric override was used this morning under admin access. Can anyone in this room confirm they had authorization to use her device?" Still nothing. I imagined the VP, Mark Ryland, sitting frozen like a man who just realized he parked on train tracks. The kind of guy who thought being tall and loud made him untouchable. I pictured the red crawling up his neck, that vein above his left temple twitching while he decided whether to lie or stall. Christine didn't wait. "Where is Lauren DeWitt right now?" That one landed, because I wasn't there. I hadn't entered. And someone probably important, was just now realizing that was a problem. I slid further down the hallway, pressed against the wall, still out of sight. Let it unfold. Let every single person in that room come to the same slow, horrifying realization. They were witnessing a federal contract pitch using misappropriated credentials, under false attribution. And that wasn't just unethical. That was actionable. I opened my phone and refreshed the legal inbox. Auto response. Escalation logged. Audit event flagged. IR team dispatched. Translation. Christine wasn't alone. It was behind her. Inside, I heard Sierra start to talk again. This time fast, high-pitched, panicked. The slides were already open when I got in. I thought Lauren set it up. I assumed... Christine cut her off. "No, you didn't. Because you opened the device at 9:12 a.m. and Lauren's badge didn't activate after 8:46. Another beat of silence. Paper rustled. I imagined her flipping a printed log, then the sound of a chair being pushed back. Probably Ryland, probably trying to clarify. We had a scheduling mix-up, he said. His voice, usually booming with performative certainty, was lower now. There was a delegation error, no ill intent. Intent, Christine replied, is not required for a breach. And then, the quietest moment of all, the shuffle of someone realizing their promotion just died mid-sentence. Christine again. This model was submitted under Lauren DeWitt's name. The credential chain still lists her as sole architect, and yet she's not here. I didn't smile, but I did stand up. Just a little straighter, just a little colder. Let them squirm. They hadn't seen me yet, but they would. The door was still propped open when I stepped into Conference A, slow and deliberate, like I had all the time in the world. Because I did. That's what happens when you're holding the receipts. All eyes turned. Christine looked up first, and in her expression, I saw exactly what I needed. Recognition and relief. Sierra froze mid-sentence. Her hand was still awkwardly raised, like she'd been gesturing to a point she no longer understood. The VP stiffened in his chair, eyes flicking between me and his daughter like maybe he could still spin this. But even the sales guy in the corner had leaned back, lips parted, watching like he knew the script had just flipped. I walked to the front, just past the projector's halo, and stopped beside Christine. No theatrics. No clearing of the throat. I handed her my employee badge and my phone, already unlocked, open to the audit log screen. I wasn't scheduled to present, I said, calm as a courtroom. Apparently. Christine took them without a word, scanned the log with one practiced sweep, and nodded once. Thank you. She didn't need to ask if I'd built the model. She didn't need to ask if the laptop was mine. Everything had already answered that for her. I'll need IT in here, she said over her shoulder, already walking toward the device on the table. Forensic copy. Chain of custody protocol. Now. I glanced at the screen. The slides were paused mid-transition, stuck between the audit trace flowchart and the policy overlap heat map. My notes were still in the speaker section. Unchanged. Even the file name was mine. LDWQ2 protocol final. Sierra tried to say something. Lauren, I thought you were... But her voice cracked halfway through, and she ended up choking on my name like it burned her tongue. I didn't respond. Not to her. She didn't matter anymore. Christine turned back toward the room. Who last handled this laptop? No answer. It's tied to federal vendor submissions, she added, which means every keystroke is auditable. Anyone want to revise their statement? Still nothing. Just a few scattered blinks and the slow, soul-sucking realization settling over Sierra's shoulders like wet concrete. Christine tapped the mouse. Currently logged in as Lauren DeWitt. Biometric bypass via temp admin access, authorized by M. Ryland at 9:11 a.m. She turned. Mr. Ryland, you authorized your daughter to use an employee's credentials during a federal compliance demonstration? The VP's jaw twitched. She needed access to the model. The team assumed the model isn't the issue. The credentials are. Christine didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Behind her, IT arrived. Quiet men in gray polos, one carrying a sealed kit. They didn't ask questions. They just opened the bag, unplugged the laptop, and began the duplication process. Chain of custody form in triplicate. Sierra backed away from the table, one trembling step like it might save her. It didn't. Someone on the client's side, a man with a government badge clipped to his lanyard, stood slowly. Is this part of the demonstration? Christine looked at him without blinking. It is now. He nodded, lips pressed flat, didn't sit back down. I returned to the side of the room, hands folded in front of me, calm, measured, not smug. I didn't need to gloat. The room was already doing that for me, not with words, but with what wasn't being said. No one asked if Sierra was okay. No one defended her. No one offered an explanation, because they all knew. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a violation with weight. The kind of thing contracts get revoked over, the kind of thing internal investigators don't let go, and the only person who didn't seem to grasp how final it all was Sierra. She whispered something to her father. I didn't hear it, didn't care. Christine looked up from the laptop one last time and asked the question that ended it. Is there any part of this demonstration that wasn't built by Lauren DeWitt? No one answered. Not even Sierra. The room they led me to wasn't an office. It was a converted war room. You could tell by the folding chairs, the projector still dangling from a ceiling tile, and the dry erase board with 6 acronyms I'd seen in federal audit memos. Christine was already there, typing with one hand, coffee in the other. No one said anything as I entered. The government liaison, Marcus, I think his name was, sat across the table with a legal pad already half filled. He didn't smile. Government guys don't smile when they're holding pens. Christine nodded for me to begin. I didn't sit. I opened my phone, mirrored the logs to the room's shared screen, and said the words I'd waited 6 weeks, and maybe 4 years, to say. This model was built from the ground up using a multi-tiered access system. Every user tier has traceable session behavior, encrypted checkpoints, and dual auth verification. I built it that way because this environment doesn't just demand security, it demands proof of security. Christine glanced at Marcus. He was already nodding. I walked them through the override log, how the admin credentials were used without escalation protocol, how biometric access was force bypassed through a buried tool only 2 people in the company knew existed. Myself and a former infrastructure lead who retired last year, how the system flagged the event because the trigger sequence was used outside approved hours. It never should have worked, I said, but the override permission came from a Ryland level account. That's VP tier. It temporarily disables internal red flags. Christine tilted her head. How'd you catch it? I built a shadow alert, I said simply. Not in the manual. It pings me anytime my user session activates without token sync. 1 in a million chance. But today was that day. Marcus didn't even blink. And you can document the alert was live before today? I pulled up a backup timestamped last month. With log trail, I said, dropping the file into the shared folder like it was a hammer. For the first time, Marcus looked almost impressed. He tapped his pen once on the pad and muttered, "You're a firewall disguised as a strategist." Christine smirked. Told you. They asked more questions, technical ones, about where data passed through, how it handled nested authentication, how each user tier was assigned based on federal access groupings. I answered every one without flinching, because I didn't just know the system, I was the system. Sierra couldn't even spell half the acronyms they were referencing. She wouldn't have known what to do if the dashboard threw a level 3 lockout. Marcus leaned back. You know what concerns me? Tell me. The override was used during a live vendor demonstration for a government renewal. That means not only did someone gain access without clearance, they did so while attempting to misrepresent authorship during an active compliance audit. If you hadn't flagged it, and this got past our team, it would have been considered soft fraud, Christine finished, voice sharp. We'd be in violation of Section 14 under the Integrity Clause. He looked at her, then back at me. This wasn't just sloppy. It was calculated and stupid. Christine stood. We've already started internal response. Sierra Ryland has been suspended pending full investigation. Mark Ryland has been asked to step aside during the review, effective immediately. I didn't smile, because I wasn't surprised. This wasn't victory. Not yet. But it was the edge of it. The part where the ground evens out and you stop climbing. The part where the ones who tried to climb over you start realizing they're standing on quicksand. Christine slid a folder toward me. You'll be the primary on the renewal moving forward. We've already told procurement. They've approved it. Marcus folded his hands. We'll be recommending continued engagement, but with one condition. I looked up. He said it flat. Lauren DeWitt remains project lead, or we walk. I finally sat down. No rush, no gloat, just gravity. Justice, 1 inch at a time. The badge scanner turned green before I even touched the door. I didn't flinch this time. No double take, no second attempt, no quietly standing in a hallway like I didn't belong. It just opened, like it always should have. Inside the boardroom, no one stood when I entered. But they didn't look away either. There was a hush to it, like everyone knew we weren't just here to talk about a contract. We were here to correct something that had already blown past politics and landed squarely in the territory of risk. Christine sat at the head of the table, flanked by 2 outside counsel and a silent IT rep whose lanyard had a red stripe on it, security clearance verified. Across from her sat Marcus from the agency, back again, tie looser this time, but eyes just as sharp. I wasn't even halfway to my seat when he gave the smallest nod, just enough for me to register. You're not a guest anymore. Sierra wasn't there. Mark Ryland wasn't there either. Nobody said their names, but 2 empty chairs were hard to miss. I placed my notebook gently on the table, same color-coded tabs, same pen tucked inside, and opened to the page labeled Final Federal Renewal Presentation Version. The file was already mirrored on the projector, this time with my name and title clean across the intro slide. Lauren DeWitt, Senior Data Strategist. Federal Compliance Lead, no footnotes, no attributions, no joint work nonsense. Mine. Christine cleared her throat and began. For the record, we are opening this session as a compliance board-level review of contract conduct and vendor positioning. Her voice was dry, surgical, exactly how it needed to be. There is clear misuse of credentials and attempted misrepresentation in a federal context. She read aloud from the printed memo. This not only violates internal data protocols, it intersects directly with our obligations under Section 14 of the Integrity Clause, tied to our vendor renewal with the Department of Interagency Audit Review. Someone coughed. No one made eye contact. Marcus didn't flinch. The agency, he said plainly, has reviewed the submitted materials, audit logs, and security triggers, along with Ms. DeWitt's documentation of the unauthorized access. He looked at me, then at the table. We are awarding the renewal, but with a stipulation. And there it was. The tension in the room shifted. Not panic, but preparation. Everyone knew what was coming next. He said it evenly, without theatrics. Lauren DeWitt remains project lead, or we walk. Silence. The kind of silence that makes careers end and reorganizations begin. The CFO leaned in, just a breath from his mic. Understood, he said quickly. Christine closed the folder. I tapped the projector remote and started my deck. No apology for the delay. No cute banter. Just data. Layered. Clean. Aggressive in its clarity. I showed the updated forecast now that the model had been decoupled from all unauthorized edits. I pointed out how the federal threshold module had self-corrected when Sierra fumbled slide 14 last time, thanks to a recovery protocol I wrote at 2 a.m. on a Sunday 2 months ago. There were nods, notes taken, but no praise, and I didn't need it. Because this wasn't a performance. This was a correction. This was what happens when someone tries to erase your name and learns the ink doesn't wash out. I closed the final slide and let the screen go dark. No applause. But the room sat a little heavier, like something just clicked into place that had been broken for a long, long time. The promotion offer came 2 days later, slid across the glass-top desk by the new interim VP, someone who introduced himself by first name only, didn't mention golf once, and actually asked about retention triggers before we sat down. Director of Strategic Compliance, full ownership of the federal suite, my own team. I didn't smile when I accepted. I just nodded once, closed the folder, and asked when we could start clearing the access logs from Sierra's trail. He didn't hesitate. Already done, and her departure memo went out this morning. Resignation? His eyes flicked sideways. Effective immediately. No comments. I didn't ask about Mark Ryland. Didn't need to. By then, his email was already on auto-reply. Retired early, the subject line said. No goodbye message, just silence. Like he was trying to disappear into the office wallpaper and pray no one remembered his last name. But people did. Christine made sure of that. So did Marcus when he requested a permanent audit integration using my framework. I wasn't just a lead now. I was a firewall built into the bones of the department. And Elias? That man is now in IT security. Turns out, the certification binder I spotted him studying near the loading dock 6 months ago wasn't just for show. He'd been chipping away at the coursework every night after shifts. And after what he saw, what he risked by speaking to me that morning, legal fast-tracked his onboarding. Last I checked, he was managing endpoint audit protocols, the same kind Sierra bypassed without blinking. Funny how the quiet ones end up holding the real power. And me? I still use the same slide deck. But there's one difference. On the very last page, under the final chart beneath the compliance matrix and the retention protocol, I added a single line of text. Not bold, not centered. Just there, at the bottom right corner, like a watermark. Integrity isn't silent, it's time-stamped. No applause, no banners, no company-wide blast. Just that slide, just the truth. And now, every time someone opens it, they see my name, right where it always belonged.